Hello. A few days ago it was World Poetry Day, and at the time I did think about recording something, but by the time I got in from work I was feeling so brain dead I could barely string 3 brain cells together, let alone my usual 4, and singularly failed to record anything. And last night I was chatting with my adoptive nephew Tom, who has recently acquired a copy of Sir John Betjeman's works, which I also have a copy of. And we were discussing the poems, and I thought, why not record a few of John Betjeman's works as a sort of belated nod to World Poetry Day. I've been looking through, picking out ones I particularly like, but which also have a significance I can work into this waffle, and I've chosen 4 of them. The first one I want to read to you is The Arrest of Oscar Wilde at the Cadogan Hotel. A huge fan of Oscar Wilde's work, his poems, his plays, his children's stories and so on. And whilst I have no doubt that Oscar Wilde did a variety of what shall we say, somewhat dodgy things on the quiet, which would probably have him falling foul of Operation Yewtree if he were a modern day celebrity rather than one of centuries past. Nonetheless, despite his, which we call it, personal habits, in terms of all the rent boys and so on, he's left a huge legacy, a huge literary legacy, and had a major impact on the lives of many people in the centuries since his demise back in the early, well, I say centuries, it's not been that long, is it, since the early 1900s when he died. But nonetheless, this for me is a somewhat sad poem because it marks his fall from grace, his decline into a figure of scandal and rebuke by the society of the day, a very hypocritical society of the day. And for quite a while his works were simply not performed. His books became the kind of thing sold in brown paper bags under the counter rather than the formally celebrated works sold openly and publicly. Such were the moral pruderies of the days in which he lived and the days after he had died. Thankfully he's been rehabilitated somewhat now. So, The Arrest of Oscar Wilde at the Cadogan Hotel. He sipped at a weak hock and seltzer as he gazed at the London skies through the Nottingham lace of the curtains, or was it his bees' winged eyes? To the right and before him Pont Street did tower in her new-built red, as hard as the morning gaslight that shone on his unmade bed. I want some more hock in my seltzer, and Robbie, please give me your hand. Is this the end or beginning? How can I understand? So you've bought me the latest yellow book, and Buchan has got in it now. Approval of what is approved of is as false as a well-kept vow. More hock, Robbie! Where is the seltzer? Dear boy, pull again at the bell. They're all little better than cretins, though this is the Cadogan Hotel. One Astrakhan coat is at Willis's, another one's at the Savoy. Do fetch my Morocco portmanteau, and bring them on later, dear boy. A thump and a murmur of voices. Oh, why must they make such a din? As the door of the bedroom swung open, and 2 plainclothes policemen came in. Mr. Wilde, we have come to take you where felons and criminals dwell. We must ask you to leave with us quietly, for this is the Cadogan Hotel. He rose and he put down the yellow book. He staggered, and, terrible-eyed, he brushed past the palms on the staircase and was helped to a hansom outside. And from there, of course, he ended up in court and then in prison. Now, first and foremost, John Betjeman is a poet of place. And you've got a sort of a hint of that in the Oscar Wilde poem where he's talking about the streets around the area. And this poem, which is called Felixstowe, or The Last of Her Order, is a poem about Felixstowe, obviously, a place just up the road from me where I love to visit and wander on the beach and mooch around the charity shops and go and have an ice cream and something to eat. It's a very restful place to be in. The Last of Her Order subtitle is a reference to some nuns who... I have no idea if this order, sort of convent order, is still in Felixstowe. I've never noticed it, so perhaps the last of her order has shuffled off her mortal coil and taken her convent with her. I don't know. But Felixstowe. With one consuming roar along the shingle, the long waves claw and rakes the pebbles down, to where its backwash and the next wave mingle, our mounting arch of water, reedy brown. Against the tide the offshore breezes blow. Oh, wind and water, this is Felixstowe. In winter, when the sea winds chill and shriller than those of summer, all their cold unload, full on the gimcrack attic of the villa, where I am lodging off the Orwell Road. I put my final shilling in the meter, and only make my loneliness completer. In 1894, when we were founded, counting our Reverend Mother, we were 6. How full of hope we were and prayer surrounded, the little sisters of the hanging pyx. We built our orphanage, we ran our school. Now only I am left to keep the rule. Here in the gardens of the Spa Pavilion, warm in the whisper of a summer sea, the cushioned scabious, a deep vermilion, with white pins stuck in it, looks up at me, a sunlit kingdom touched by butterflies, and so my memory of winter dies. Across the grass the poplar shades grow longer, and louder clang the waves along the coast. The band picks up, the evening breeze is stronger, and all the world goes home to tea and toast. I hurry past a cake shop's tempting scones, bound for the red brick twilight of St. John's. Thou knowest my down-sitting and mine uprising. Here, where the white light burns with steady glow, safe from the vain world's silly sympathizing, safe with the love that I was born to know, safe from the surging of the lonely sea, my heart finds rest, my heart finds rest in thee. Betjeman was a devout Christian, and it's the love of Christ that he was born to know, rather than the love of some woman he met in Felixstowe. Now this third poem, which is Monody on the Death of the Platonist Bank Clerk, sad little piece, and I've chosen it for a couple of reasons. At our moot, local pagan gathering in a couple of days' time coming up, we are going to have a death cafe, with the roll-up to the pagan festival at the end of the month of Samhain, which is a festival of the dead, a time to honour the ancestors, those who have passed on to whichever plane of existence they've passed on to. We start thinking about death, and we start thinking about the people we know and love, humans and animals, who have passed on to other existences. And we also have a bit of a memento mori, where we think about the fact that we too will one day be ancestors, we too will one day shuffle off our mortal coils, and it's a good time in the hubbub of life and the sort of rushing to and fro of work and the rest of it, to pause and think, what kind of a legacy am I leaving? Will I be mourned, or will I be forgotten about within 30 seconds of being cold? Will there be people shedding tears of sadness, or will there be people jumping for joy that I'm dead? It's a time to think of the kind of impact we're having on the world around us, and try to make sure in whatever many years we've got left to live, that we make it a good impact, that we leave behind us a legacy worth leaving, rather than be the kind of people who make hardly any impact at all, or indeed the kind of people who are so hated everyone is glad to see the back of them. So, this being a sort of funereal type of a poem about people facing their death and coming to the end, I thought I'd read this, and it has a reflection which, although it's about a bank clerk, I think could well apply to a lot of academics as well. And often, I can't speak on behalf of every single academic, obviously, but there are quite a few students, people I've taught in the past, years and years ago, who stay in touch, and occasionally we meet up for a coffee and a chat, and they sort of update me on what kind of jobs they got, and if they've got married, they've got kids, they've got this, that, the other has happened in their lives. And they sort of update me, and it's nice to keep in touch. And there is an element of that in this poem of someone reflecting on their past and their knowledge of the people who have touched their life before they've ended it and shuffled off to whatever fate awaits them. So, monody on the death of a Platonist bank clerk. This is the lamp where he first read Whitman. Out of the library large and free, every quarter the bus to Kirkstall stopped and waited, but on read he. This was his room, with books in plenty. Dusty, now I have raised the blind. Fenimore Cooper, Ballantyne, Henty, Edward Carpenter wedged behind. These are the walls adorned with portraits, camera studies and Kodiak snaps. Camp at Pevensey, scouts at Cleethorpes, there he is with the lads and chaps. This is the friend, the best and greatest, pure in his surplice, smiling true. The enlarged photomaton, that's the latest, next to the coloured one, august blue. These are his pipes, how he loved them, puffed and petted them after walks, after tea in a frowst with crumpets, puffed the smoke into serious talks. All the lot of them, how they came to him, tea and chinwag, gay young lives. Somehow they were never the same to him when they married and brought their wives. There's quite a lot of closeted academics, probably not as many in the closet as back in his lifetime, but yes. And the last one is also a funeral poem for the same chosen for the same reason that the previous one was chosen for. It's called Death in Lemington. But the added reason for choosing this is not just to fit in with the Death Cafe coming up next week, but because quite a few years ago now, I chanced upon a YouTube clip uploaded from a TV show from a long old time ago now, probably, I guess must be in the 70s, something like that, in which Sir John Betjeman is being interviewed on a TV panel show, and the two other guests on the panel show are Maggie Smith, who is now, of course, Dame Maggie Smith, but this was, I think, must have been before she got her damehood, and Kenneth Williams. And he and the host of the show have just had a bit of an argument about politics, and I suppose possibly in a move to shift the conversation on, Maggie Smith and Kenneth Williams whip out a book of poetry, a book of Sir John Betjeman's poems, and announce they're going to read the poem whilst the author, the poet, is sitting there, and they take it in turns to read verses. Maggie Smith has just the most beautiful diction as she reads. I wish I had that level of diction. It's like cut glass listening to her read. And Kenneth Williams, of course, is also a very excellent and good reader. And by the end of the poem, it's obvious that Sir John Betjeman is very sort of moved, very touched by the fact that they've chosen to read his poem in such a beautifully voiced way. And I thought that was terribly nice, because Betjeman in the interview comes across as just really sweet and lovely and thoughtful and clever and kind. And I sort of thought about a lot of the interviews you see with celebrities these days, and they come across as shallow and thick and narcissistic. and just that kind of return to an earlier age when people were famous for doing things worthwhile rather than just because they'd been on a reality TV show or something equally as vacuous. And you do still get some celebrities who are very, very clever, Stephen Fry and people like that. But I don't know, it just feels to me, and that could be me being a grumpy old man, but it does feel to me we see less and less celebration of people who are worthwhile and more celebration of people who are celebrities. And that's all they are. They're celebrated because they are, not for any great personal quality. But anyway, so this is the poem that Kenneth Williams and Maggie Smith were reading to the author of the poem, Death in Lemington. She died in the upstairs bedroom, by the light of the evening star that shone through the plate glass window from over Leamington Spa. Beside her the lonely crochet lay patiently and unstirred, but the fingers that would have worked it were dead as the spoken word. And nurse came in with the tea things, breast high missed the stands and chairs, but nurse was alone with her own little soul, and the things were alone with theirs. She bolted the big round window, she let the blinds unroll, and she set a match to the mantel. She covered the fire with coal, and "Tea," she said in a tiny voice. "Wake up, it's nearly 5. Oh, chintzy, chintzy cheeriness, half dead and half alive. Do you know that the stucco is peeling? Do you know that the heart will stop? From those yellow Italianate arches, do you hear the plaster drop?" Nurse looked at the silent bedstead, at the grey, decaying face, as the calm of a Lemington evening drifted into the place. She moved the table of bottles away from the bed to the wall, and tiptoeing gently over the stairs, turned down the gas in the hall. It is a sad, grey end to a life, but so often the case now as in Betjeman's lifetime. But hopefully not too sad a note to end on, and if I get the time and the brain capacity, I'll record a few more poems, maybe slightly more upbeat ones from other authors and poets, before too much longer. Farewell for now.